All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, TCM crew. This is Mike and Adam talking to you for our preseason pod. As we just found out, I have no power over Craig here. It is, but again, welcome to the pod. Going to go over a couple things tonight. We're going to go as we always do on these preseason, and by preseason I mean just before the season starts. Pod is we're going to talk about each division, kind of who we see as the favorites, who we see as somebody that might shake it up a little bit, and who are the bottom dwellers in each division. After that, we'll kind of go into free agency a little bit. A lot of money being spent this year in free agency. It's a fun shakeup to watch a lot of big names kind of switch cities. Um, then we're going to kind of talk about what lower means. New idea for the winter ball type stuff since we went over in the last pod. And apparently, nobody decided to listen to that. So we're going to rehash that again this time. And hopefully, you have a better understanding of what the goal is with that. So, with that, Adam, do you have any words to start us off with?
No, I'll let you start off with your opinion on the East, but I think it was a pretty crazy offseason, so it'll be fun to see how the season progresses.
It was a lot of money being thrown around out there. It was like real life baseball a couple years ago. So it will be it will that's the Yankees. So um, I think when you look at them, they're more or less the same team they have been. Their hitting has um, I think not too many holes there. So um, I sadly I think it is really their division to lose once again. What do you think on the Yankees?
Yeah, you know what? I think they definitely have a strong team, and probably one of the stronger ones. I also think though that they are a little bit older, and their bullpen is not as strong as it once was. Losing Chapman, they didn't even fill that spot up again. Uh, I actually have them probably finishing second in the division. The favorites to me, I think, are Tampa Bay. Um, I'm a pitching heavy philosopher when it comes to baseball, and I just love the rotation that Turtle has. Um, some of it he acquired just by taking over Tampa, but getting Cole Reagans is huge. So when I was caretaking the Mets, like that was the one person that I had to have if I was trading Syndergaard. Um, I could not have given him up. I think he is going to be better than Honeywell when all is said and done. But yeah, he's got him right now third, and he's definitely a little bit away. But as the season progresses, he's got a lot of pieces that can really move in there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of how this division shakes up. You're right. The Yankees are getting a little bit older. I still just they have all that money to spend. Like it's unfortunate that they have so much money to spend and the ability to do it kind of at will. But I honestly think that it's still their division to lose. I think everybody else is just kind of playing catch up, or if that. Um, I mean, Toronto's got a decent team still. Their pitching's not too bad. Their hitting's okay. Boston went out there and spent a lot of money this offseason to get a couple players. Will it make them any better? Probably not. But they're trying. So I think Boston's problem is their starting pitching's been mediocre at best. So unless that all of a sudden turns around, um, we get those jumps that Boston needs out of those three big arms just waiting in the wings, Mata, Whalen, and Wade. Once those guys come up, the MWM is or MWW, MWW, WMW, WMW, what the fuck ever. I'll make it a thing eventually. Anyway, once they start popping, you know, outlook might change. But I don't know. I still see it's New York's division, and then a bunch of people hustling out for second, hoping to catch a wild card.
Yeah, like, you know what? The kind of the way that I put it was I think Tampa Bay or New York. If one of those teams has the injuries, the third team I have to say is probably Toronto. I mean, your team has definitely gotten better, but like you said, it's pitching. So you can bash the ball and you can close out the game. It's whether you can not fall behind so quickly. And I think once Waylon and Mata come up for you as starting pitchers, you'll be kind of set. The problem that Toronto has right now, I think, is some of their players got signed back that I thought were actually going to get signed. So he's already losing 15 mil, and he didn't really improve his team.
Mm.
So I think that will be something that we'll kind of have to look out to. And then just quickly on Baltimore, they have very good youth up and coming. Shane Hurst got kind of lucky in winter ball, which is nice. Their thing in the future is pitching. I also just need to find a GM to take that team because I think they have the pieces that they could be very good if things work out. It's just right now it's not looking so pretty without a GM. It's hard to control four teams. So one of the things I might ask as well is if there is anyone that wants to take a second team as we talk through this chat. I might get someone else to take a second team.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I know there's been plenty other leagues I've been in where I've run 2 teams under 2 different usernames to help out for a while. Yeah, it's one of those things that, yeah, I think Rain hit it on the head there. The AL East is a tough division for, I mean, it's funny if you look at Mogul right now and look at the win-loss projections, I mean, it has Boston finishing last in that division, and they very well might. I think this is one of those divisions that's going to be a bit of a slaughter fest. And whoever rises at the top hopefully won't get too beat up doing it. So it'll be interesting to see. I think the AL Central, which is the next one we're going to move on to talk about, is kind of the opposite. I think it's just whoever rises at the top is just the one that got lucky enough to sneak on in to a playoff spot. And again, that's just first glance, but at first glance, like, ooh, it looks relatively rough over there. I almost feel like, the Essentials should just not be in existence this year and just let the East take, more playoff spots based on the fact that they have, superior teams over there, so but
Yeah, you know what?
what do you think of the Central? I mean, again, I it's Minnesota and Chicago, it looks like, with, everybody else kind of just middling behind them, but even them, like, I wouldn't be surprised if either one of those teams finish 4th or 5th in the East, for example. Or
You
even
know,
4th in the West.
I'm actually going to say Detroit is like the San Diego Padres of the West or of the Central, I should say. The the pitching that they have, Sixto Sanchez looks like he's finally ready. Bo Burrows looks like his numbers are good. Oh, let me rephrase that. His stats are terrible, but his vitals are very good. And Fado looks like he's going to be really good as well. He's kind of hoping, I think Manning turns into something a little bit more, and I'm surprised he did, but he made some like cheap FA signings, and I think Eric is really just trying to get to that next free agency, but he has 85 million to spend. There are plenty of teams out there that I think are starting to rebuild, and he's got a lot of the pieces that look pretty nice. Um, so that would be the team that I actually think will win the division. I think Chicago, uh, you know, it's one of those divisions any team can push themselves over by adding to it, but I think Detroit has the best chance if no one does anything. With Jacob taking over Minnesota, the problem is I think he's getting a little bit of an aging team, and from the looks of it, he's looking specifically for a second base instead of his 56 overall that's playing there for Sim One. But there's not a lot of good second basemen that are available. To be honest, especially, I think we all can agree that what I've said about the 90 overall players, you don't get a ton of them. Those are really your Hall of Fame eligible people. A lot of players cap out at like 88, 87 overall. Uh, but if you want a mid 80s player, you got to give up quite a bit to get one.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, yeah, and you're right. I mean, yeah, I mean, even when I saw that earlier, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll help him out. I gotta have somebody lying about. All the guys I have are considered third baseman, and probably wouldn't play second too well. So, um, second base is one of those positions. I know when I was first trying to compete before I decided to fuck it and rebuild as a position I looked in again. There's just not a lot out there, so you take what you can get when you can get it. But yeah, this isn't a league that's just chocked full of these super 90s players yet. I mean, there's some young guys that look like they might end up there, but will they stick and will they perform are two separate things. So yeah, I look at Detroit. Detroit's not a bad team. I think their pitching's probably the best in the division, but I just think their hitting's not as good as some of the other ones. So, but yeah, they're a little bit younger. They got tons of money to spend. So I mean, it's one of those things that you can almost sit back and look to see who's in financial ruin, who's potentially going to go into financial ruin, and just give them some cash and buy some of their bigger contracts, especially if they're expiring contracts, and just try to ride them out for a year and see what you can do with it.
Yeah.
You know? So that'll be an interesting division. Like, excuse me. Again, I think it's going to be the division that has the winner and nothing else. Like, and there's going to be two or three teams scrapping for to try to win to try to move on. But I think even if they do, once they get there, it's just gonna be like, oh, why are you here? I don't think it's gonna like they're gonna make any type of noise in the postseason. They're gonna kind of limp in and then go out with a whimper. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, the interesting thing is moving into the West is I think the team that's going to win the entire AL with the best record is the Angels. And the Angels is going to get the wild card team, and the wild card team is going to be better than the Central team. So this is the time, or this is the year where maybe it's not the better idea to have the best record in the AL. Like I'm going to say that the AL East team that finishes first is going to be the second highest, and they'll get whoever comes out of the Central. And that's really the easier way to go because a lot of the times it's that first series that you just need to get through.
Right.
Um, my history has never been good in the first round. If I can get to that second round, I usually do well. I don't know what it is. I lose the first round in almost every sim league, or I win the World Series. It's one or the other. And if the Angels can go all the way, uh, it will be good. But that Central team might just get lucky to knock off the number two team and end up being in the World Series. So all you want to do is get to the playoffs if you're that AL Central. But
Yeah, and you hit on that. And the moguls a fickle bitch. That you see those teams. I've seen teams that finish sub 500 that somehow win a World Series, and you're looking at the team, and you're like, how? And there was no injuries, there was nothing that makes sense to be like, "Oh, well, that's why this happened." It was just like, Mogul felt bad for the shitty teams that let him win it all. Like, you're right, you get there and you hope for the best. It's, as Maddie would say, it's a crapshoot once you get there. Because every time I beat him in the playoffs, I'd like to poke fun, and he's like, "Well, it doesn't matter because it's a crapshoot." Well, I still won, so crapshoot that. But yeah, I think it's the Angels are the clear favorite in the West, the clear favorite in the AL. But again, you're right. You want to get to the dance and then hope that your number's called because that's all you can hope for. Which with those small, quick series, anything can happen. So, but you're right. I think West Angels easily take it. I think the wild card's going to be one of those Texas teams. Not sure which one, but I think one of those Texas team probably pulls out a wild card. Um, if one wild card comes to the West, I still see a possibility of both wild cards coming out of the AL East. I'm not sure. I think there's some good squads up there, and if they don't beat up on each other too much, that's the way that could fall. If not, I think I'd probably lean Texas over Houston, but not by much. So, it'll be very interesting to see how this season shakes out, in the East and the West. The Central, no offense to the 5 GMs there, but, we don't care. Like, it's fine. Have your little circle jerk. We'll see one of you later. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna say in the West, I it will probably be Texas, because I am running Houston pretty much, and a little inside information, they're getting torn down. So it
He
will not
says
be
as I re
Houston.
he says as I reopen them to see what do I need from Houston. I see
Uh,
what I need. I see what I need from Houston. We'll be talking shortly.
yeah, so Houston, definitely.
26 million a year. Why?
Well, so I'm assuming you're looking at Lance McCullers,
Oh, fuck no.
potentially.
I was looking at Garrett Cole.
Oh, yeah.
Get
Anyways,
back on the Cole
there were a couple
train.
people that I thought Houston were going to lose that someone actually would take a chance on, and apparently I misrepresented Houston by putting McCullers as a Type A, but say la vie. But yeah, I think Texas is definitely that team. I've kind of been saying them for the last few seasons that they look like a really nice young squad, and it just hasn't turned out to become that yet. But I really do think that they are the team that if LA doesn't fully hit everything that they should, Texas could even win the division. They're not that far away.
No, I like Texas, especially knowing now that Houston's going to be a ceiling. Um, but yeah, I mean, I like Texas as the second in that division, not the first. I don't think they have much of a shot there unless something goes terribly, terribly wrong in Los Angeles. Um, but I like I said, I think they have a nice outside shot at the playoffs. I think they end up being outside looking in, if I had to guess. But I think it's going to be close. I think that it'll be a good step forward for them, moving into their kind of real contention years. So, but yeah, so if I had to handicap the AL as a whole, I'm going to say Angels clearly win the West. Again, the Central, a bit of a crapshoot. I know you like Detroit. Um, I'm just going to go on a limb and say probably Minnesota. I'm going to say Chicago. And then New York in the East. Ooh, wild card winner is gonna be tough. I'm gonna go Boston and Toronto, just because I'm a sucker and I'm from the AL East. So we're gonna go Boston, Toronto. That's the teams that I think are duking it out. So
All right, I'm going to take New York. Sorry, Tampa winning the East. New York being the first wild card. I'll go. Uh, let's go Minnesota. Maybe they do one last hurrah on the end of Andy's team build to win the Central, and LA winning the division with Texas being the first wild card.
yeah. Either way, it should be a fun playoffs once you get there. For some of us, if we get there. So, but that's not the point. Moving on to the NL East. NL East looks a lot like the AL East, except they have one team that's gonna be really bad, and that's fine. So, um, I think that this division is going to be Philadelphia, but I think they're going to get pushed. I think the Mets are going to push them pretty hard. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington or Atlanta kind of take their shots at them as well. Um, but when I look at it, I mean, I think Philadelphia is the best hitting. I think they have the best pitching. And I think that's going to make it very tough. I think New York's hitting is close to Philadelphia's, if not on the same level, but I think the pitching is just a step or two behind, and that's what's going to make the difference there. Um, but then again, you have decent pitching and hitting in Atlanta, good hitting and okay pitching in Washington. So again, I think this is another one. I think the Easts in both leagues are going to be kind of those what you would consider draws of death or death groups or what's the World Cup term? I'm blanking on now. I think it's group of death. And I think that's what you're seeing in the East this year because again, looking at the NL looks a lot stronger than the AL does. Um, but man, that East just looks rough. So, what is your team? Do you think in the East?
Yeah, I have to go with Philly. I think they're going to win. I think New York is probably going to be one of those wild card teams. I'm hoping Atlanta can fight for it, but I'm not gonna lie. There were two free agents that I was trying to sign back, and I may have forgot to look before I went to work one day, and then the 24 hours passed.
Oh,
Which,
I know, and that was so terrible. I was so upset by that.
yeah. So unfortunately, that was another case where, hey, if someone from the AL wants to take over Atlanta, that'd be great. Because
They used to be called the Red Stockings, didn't they, when they were in Boston way back when?
well, I'm sure the next team that I mentioned this on is probably the team that you'll want to do. So you could
Okay.
if you'd like, but got one
I
more.
like I said, I'll definitely help out. I'll take till we can get a permanent caretaker. That don't bother me.
But I do think Washington has a decent team. Their pitching's kind of fading. And when I was talking to Donkey last, he was suggesting that this might be the end before he does a little bit of a rebuild. I know this offseason wasn't the greatest because he just got like a new job that he's working at, so he wasn't the most active person during free agency. But now that everything's working again, he should be back to being good.
Great. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the sim. Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's Philadelphia's division to lose, but I think the Mets are going to put a nice run to it. I think Washington, and Atlanta, are going to jockey for position, but I think it's really going to be Philly than New York. That's just kind of the way I see that league going out. Moving on to the Central, I think this Central is similar to the AL Central. Again, it's weird. I just think these leagues are mirroring each other in a very odd kind of way. Because the Central is just kind of eh. I mean, the teams at the Central of the NL are far better than the ones um, in the AL, but I still think it's going to be a fight for who makes the playoffs, and then nobody else will. So I think it's going to be ooh, Milwaukee or St. Louis, I think is the one that's gonna rise out of that. I think Pittsburgh could have a run on them. Not sure how Dan's been doing with his free agency and his such, but did they get Rivero go back?
Yeah, they got Rivera to go back, but Dan is no
Now is
longer
he
the Pirates GM, which is the other team I really need a GM to look after.
did
So
Dan leave?
Dan did leave, so unless you can convince him to come back, which would be great. He just hasn't had a lot of time, so I don't think he submitted a lineup last year or did free agency. So I
Didn't
have
he
been,
make the so he made the playoffs without a team? That's very okay. Yeah, I'll take Pittsburgh. That's a team
yeah,
near and dear to my heart.
that's
Um,
exactly why I knew that was the case.
yeah, I'll take them over and run them for a while. Oh, good lord, did he leave them in bad shape though? Jesus Christ, Dan, what did you
I don't
do?
think he did. Well, let me rephrase that.
Oh
He
no,
got
there's some specs there.
some unlucky. Yeah, you can thank me. But yeah, in terms of that, he's got a lot of money. It's a team that I feel like Pittsburgh should have had their time now. It was just the fact that you know, as much as Dave has complained about certain prospects not jumping for him, uh, he has been like on the ball doing absolutely everything. I think he's run his team magnificently, as Dave usually does. And he's got it to a point where he may not have the best team, but he's got the team that can get into the playoffs. Whereas Pittsburgh's kind of hasn't been touched. And that's going to be the biggest thing is an active GM or someone that can actually do changes to Pittsburgh to improve them might actually put them over the top because they have a lot more pieces to work with than St. Louis. Um,
Yeah,
Percy is,
I'll definitely sink my teeth into Pittsburgh and do some appropriate touching, not non Vasquez touching.
yeah. Oh my god, I can't believe
That's
you
right.
went
I
there.
went there. I went there
Oh
even
my
on the
god.
pod. I know I'm a terrible, horrible person.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons. I can think of at least like 6 to 12 specifically, but
I can think of 13.
uh,
Oh, oh,
oh my god.
oh my God. I know I'm making you all sick, aren't I? I'm just a terrible, horrible. Somebody signed off.
But Percy's team, Cincinnati, I think is going to lead the charge to dead last in that division. Just you know what, his rebuild is going a really long way, and it is actually very good. So he's got a couple really nice prospects. You know, good old Herbert Cole is definitely one of them that I really liked out of the draft. But some of his other pieces are slowly picking up. Tracy Godin looks pretty good as well, which I am glad to see. But he's got a couple more seasons, I think, until he finally does something uh, there. And Jason, I don't know what he's doing. He started to tear down his team last year. Then he started to add some free agents. So I'm curious where Jason's going with this, but he's kind of right in the middle. It might be his own version of rebuild because we all know I just tear everything down. And
What? No. How many
no,
first round picks do you have in FCM? Like 30 of them, 30?
I have a lot, but I'm not even
Don't
tanking there.
don't
I'm not actually
don't
tanking, but I'm still
listen, I was not in that conversation, no, nor did I wanna be.
no, that's
Um,
okay. But you know what? Milwaukee looks pretty decent. Uh,
I think it's Milwaukee's division if they play their cards right with St. Louis nipping at their heels.
yeah,
And then, and again, Chicago and Pittsburgh could make some noise, in that division, but it'd be a tight thing. I think the edge goes almost to St. Louis just because I think their pitching's a little bit better than Milwaukee's, but I like Milwaukee's team formation. So, gun to head, I'm taking Milwaukee over St. Louis, but not by
yeah. No, you know what? I think it. I think Milwaukee has definitely a good step there, and it will be very good. And unfortunately, I feel like some of the prospects when he took over that he has drafted that I thought were going to be really good haven't necessarily turned out as well as I thought. So I may have led him down the wrong path.
well, welcome to Mogul 18. Like, there's been plenty of prospects I've drafted that I thought were gonna be good that are still kind of like they still might be, but like I'm just sitting there staring at them year after year, like it's like that kid with a stick poking the dead body, just saying, "Come on!" Like that's what it feels like for some of these prospects.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is they all kind of just like boost up right before they peak.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that I'm starting to realize. The more we get into this version of it, is that it just doesn't run like some of the other versions, which is fine. But yeah, you have that slow progression, and then all of a sudden, they're about to peak because all of a sudden they go from like something that seems mundane to like, holy shit, they look amazing. So it's just that, and they also jump late. And I think that's what's throwing a lot of the 14ers off. Is that we're used to seeing jumps at the start of the season, like May, June, July, August. Most of my jumps I'm seeing are September. So I think there's just a culture switch. Also, that people are starting to kind of clue in on that's going to make a little bit of a difference in the end.
Yeah. I think it will be kind of curious to see how that Central ends up, but I still have to say St. Louis. That being said, in the West, that's the fun one. It's a two horse race.
Yeah, I was just oh, the two horse race between
Yeah,
Southern California teams.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, actually, it's more like a three horse race. Who between Arizona,
yeah.
Colorado, and San Francisco is going to escape with at least 51 wins to not get screwed by my tanking rule? That's the real question. But
I think I think Miami has a chance in the NL of being the one that doesn't escape 50 just because of the division they're in. Because I think Miami's looking up at 4 teams that are all clearly better teams, than most of the teams. Whereas in the West, you have 2 teams that are like, "Oh god, they might both win 100 games." And then you have 3 teams that are like, let's try not to, like, just beat up on each other too much and just skate through." So, I think you have more of a risk in the East of that than you do necessarily in the West. But yeah, it's clearly a 2-team race.
yeah, and one that I think LID is the Dodgers is still going to win. I think if that's going to be the case, it really for me depends on one thing and one thing only, and that's how much Mackenzie Gore performs at 85 overall and how much he jumps when or if he does. And I think that's really the only thing that's going to decide how the season goes because I I think Dodgers definitely have more power. I think they're going to hit more home runs because of Cody Bellinger. Um, but their bullpen took a little bit of a hit with losing Jansen. Uh, they have 3 really good starters and then a couple others that are fill-ins, but both teams kind of have that, like, 2 or 3 90 overall hitters and then a bunch of, uh, like, mid-80s, but the Dodgers got Jose Ramirez and Anthony Rizzo in free agency, and that's kind of the reason that I have to take them over San Diego.
Yeah, I think LA's got the better hitters. I think San Diego has the better pitchers, and so it's gonna be that classic chicken or egg, hitters or pitchers, which is gonna make the difference. Um, it's so close to call for me, honestly, it is. I generally think, um, hitters go a little bit further, just because I'd rather outslug people, than outpitch them. Though if I could do both with great defense, that would be obviously the most preferable way to go, but, that's kind of just a one and it all kind of thing, so, um, but I mean, I think LA has a slightly better defense than San Diego too, so I think that I would definitely give them the edge, but it's not by much, it really isn't. So I would go so again, so looking at the NL as a whole, I'm going, Angels. Why does it Los Angeles? Jesus Christ, apparently I'm just losing my damn mind. I'm taking the Dodgers in the West, with San Diego taking the wild card one. I'm taking Milwaukee in the Central with nobody else making it out of that division. Philly in the East with, I'm gonna guess the Mets taking the wild card there. But then again, you're looking at Mets, you're looking at Philly, who cares? And then the, Dodgers and the Padres, and that's gonna be a bloodbath in the NL side of the bracket, like, to the point that you almost wonder if they're gonna beat each other up too much, that the AL is gonna squeak one out this year just because of it.
Yeah. I'm going to be taking, Philly in the East. I will take, St. Louis in the Central. Then, Dodgers, winning the West with San Diego with the first wild card, having to face, New York as the second wild card, and whoever is that unlucky soul gets to play the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, and that's
uh,
just gonna be a hellacious, "Oh, good, I made it through. Oh god, I have to play the Dodgers," like and then, somehow you beat the Dodgers, and it's like, "Oh, crap, now I'm probably playing the Phillies." Like, it's oof, I feel much better for the AL counterparts of mine, than I do for, that NL, because that's just gonna be, absolute mess. So, now, free agency. Free agency was, big this year, a lot of money getting who do you think did the best in free agency?
you know what? I'm probably going to say the Dodgers, only because it's very hard to improve on a two-time World Series champion, and yet they did it. They made their team better. So that's where I kind of go with that. I think Fred lost some big salary and actually was able to get people back. And it will be very interesting to see how that one goes because Jose Ramirez is definitely an upgrade and younger than Turner. Rizzo is going to be good, but that's a huge contract, probably in 4 years. But for now, it kind of does exactly what they need it to do. That's kind of my opinion there. I think the other team that did really well are the Angels, adding Correa. Um, that was someone that I didn't think was going to go to the AL West. I actually thought another team was going to sign him, but that did not happen. But for the Angels, it's just going to be about cash. And I feel like the cash is actually really high this year, so we'll have to kind of see how that goes. Because I did leave the same mode on, fan mode on,
Mhm.
um, because last year we had that dip before, so I didn't really mess around that much with it. So everyone may get a little extra money this year, and it might go back down next year. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the Angels are projected to lose 41 of their 54 million, so that will be, that'll be something to keep an eye on. But yeah, there was a lot of money being spent in free agency. I was surprised. Well, I think part of it was there was so many comp players this year and good comp players that people just decided to go buck wild. I mean, shit. I spent. I'm looking at it here. Just a million, two and a half shy of 60 billion a year on three dudes this offseason. So it's about 57 and a half I spent on Turner, Edwards, and Freeman. So probably going to regret all of those contracts really soon. But I finally decided to play like the Red Sox would and just spend a bunch of money and just pretend like it doesn't matter. So um, but yeah, there was a lot of money spent, a lot of free agents moving cities. I think the shakeup will be seen in some of these divisions. Again, you're looking at the two East divisions. You're looking at pretty tight divisions. The Centrals, you're looking at tight too, but in a completely different aspect. And then the Wests, you both have kind of those two teams, those three teams that are going to like make noise, and then no other. So it'll be interesting to see how these free agents pay out, or play out even for some of the people that really went out and went hard in free agency. So it'll be interesting to see if it makes a difference for some of these.
Yeah, and I mean, Rain just said there were too many comp players, and I definitely think there were a lot of comp players. But
Sure, sure was.
when you look at the contracts that players are asking, like the only reason Correa or the only reason Houston's in rebuild mode now is Correa asked for 35 million from me, and I was not going to sign him to Houston. Like I could get him down to like 31. I mean, he signed for 35 plus, but I don't think he is worth that. As a shortstop, shortstop is not the position that I would spend 35 million on. Um, right? So, uh,
No, you're right. They use it. I tell you what, heavy and hard after him. And then it got just too high, and I ended up going to somebody else, and that didn't work. And I went to somebody else after that. Like I ended up with my third choice for shortstop. Um, but yeah, I mean, there that some of the contract demands because they had good years were way high, and I think that's why you get so many comps because you get even some of my guys like Grandal, the catcher. Like I knew I wasn't nobody was going to sign him as a comp, but for what he was asking for, I'd rather take him back at 2 years and eight than what he wanted.
yep. And sometimes you get lucky, and that's kind of the thing, right? Sometimes a player that you think is going to get signed just doesn't, because it actually doesn't fit anyone else's need. Um, like even with Lance McCullers, the only reason that I put him at 2 for 16 is he wanted about 18.5 million to sign, so I made him Type A. Um, but in a case like what you just asked, I mean, you're the Mets, so like you can just sign uh, Snell to 29.5. If he pitches better, it's always going to rise. If he pitches a little bit worse, then it drops, right? So,
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I shit last year, I had Scherzer in AAA, and he was making like $35 million. But on the Red Sox, I just threw him in AAA and didn't care because I could afford to do it. So some of the bigger spending teams can make those mistakes and get away with them. But some of those smaller market teams have to be very careful. So free agency like this year, where there's so many great players out there, and some of those smaller or mid-market teams who could really get a couple guys to help them out and push them over the top, they can't do it because all the big markets were just out there swinging their dicks around this year. It made it real difficult for those small and mid-market teams to get somebody of substance. But I was, and seeing how many people that weren't really paying attention during free agency, or GMs that have had to step away for whatever reason for the time being, kind of also like shows what free agency really was. Because if teams were out there paying attention, teams like Pittsburgh would have signed a bunch of those guys because they have the damn money to do it, and it would have made them potentially favorites for their division. Again, they weren't going to do anything. They weren't going to go to the World Series. They weren't going to win it all. Um, but they would look good. They would bump up their fan increase, a lot of that stuff. They have money and they have cap space. So they could have made a couple nice splashes, but didn't because of lack of leadership. So I think that might have hurt some of the free agency. I think we would have had a much busier free agency if that had not been the case, and some of these teams had indeed been filled, at least in their GM slots.
yeah, yeah. I definitely think of all the teams, the team that's in the healthiest position of the open teams, I would probably have to say is Baltimore. They're the nice thing is Free kind of left them uh, half young and half like competitive. And when first FA even came out, he signed Donaldson just to tie over. So he got a couple good players, and that's the other thing. Sometimes with comp, uh, you sign a player only because you're hoping to comp them around. Um, that's kind of what I was hoping with last year with Houston. I signed Marcus Stroman to a 3-year, 14.4. He's pitching far better than he ever did in Toronto, and now hopefully I trade him for something better than a fifth round draft pick. And then it just becomes a clear win.
Right, and I think that's more teams need to make some gambles, but it is what it is. It is what it is. I see the one question we got here was what. Um, that's not the right chat.
Who won the most from
Yeah,
FA?
who won the most from free agency? Um, that's a good question. I think we could just take stabs in the dark here and guess on it. I honestly think it's going to be one of those. Sadly, you're not going to like the answers. We'll see shortly. I think we'll see, through the dog days of summer here, kind of which of those free agents that signed, especially those big contract free agents, who's playing up to that. Who's playing well, who's not, and who is actually helping their team, and who's just putting in a day's work. So I mean, you, again, look at a team like, and again, biased here, sure, but a team like Boston went out and spent a bunch of money, got three big free agents. Um, and playing them and hoping to win with them. So it'll be interesting to see how they do, you know, in that environment in Boston, and to see what kind of numbers they can put up in that park, and whether it'll make a difference for them because they went out and spent a lot of money on a new first baseman, a new second baseman, and a new closer. And if they don't perform, Boston's not going to go anywhere this year. So it'll be very interesting to see. Um, teams like that went out and spent a lot of money and really changed the face of their franchises, who it pays off for and who it doesn't.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. And to be perfectly honest, I'll say that whoever wins the World Series, if they signed a big comp player, that's probably my answer. Because right now, if I had to say, it's probably the Dodgers, just because I really do think they improved their already two-time World Series champ
Yep.
team. But if they don't win, clearly someone else had a better free agency than they did.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things that get to the playoffs and anything can happen. But yeah, I think the Dodgers did free agency. I think there's a couple teams that did very well adding in free agency. Um, again, personally, even though my record here in this last offseason shows otherwise, I don't like building through free agency. I think it's a fool's errand. I think it's much better to build through the draft and through educated trading. Anything south of that, I think, is just you know not going to work. Only reason I went around swinging so much money around myself this year is because it's Boston. Boston has the money to spend, so why not spend it? See if you can't get something generating here. But generally speaking, I think trades and good drafting is really the best way to build a team. I think people spend way too much on free agency and they never get the return they should expect on those guys, and that goes for every league for the most part. Dave's league maybe being the exception. Just free agency's done so much differently over there.
Yep.
So I mean, I know over in FCM, I rarely buy a free agent. I put a lot of guys out to free agency, but I prefer to pick up my guys via trade. Just to watch that GM then turn around and move all those pieces for even more pieces. Not that that happened recently.
Yeah, sometimes you just find one person, you trade them the set of pieces, and then you trade it back to them after and ask for more than they originally got from you.
And sometimes you trade them 2 pieces and watch them turn around and take those 2 pieces and turn them into a dozen picks, and you go, "What did I fucking miss?"
Yep.
Well, I knew the picks were out there, but I wanted players. I honestly can't complain and won't complain about what's going on in FCM right now. So, anyway, um, get it up on YouTube quick. Yeah, it's not gonna happen, Percy, or I'll shoot this over. Well, I don't have to do it at all, actually, because I don't have control of this tonight, but somebody will have to dapper it up and get it on the YouTubes. It probably won't be till tomorrow or Sunday, just based on the fact that it's the weekend. And usually I send these to Jermaine and he works on the weekend, so especially Sunday. So we'll see. But why don't you go over your big idea for Winterball for those that missed it on the last time, and we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah. You know what? I first of all will talk about what I had said about the actual winter ball that currently happens and what is the best way to do it. So once again, unfortunately, Mogul 2018 doesn't let me do quite the same thing as the way that FCM does, or the older style where you can actually change potential and different things. So I could only do overall. As I said, sometimes that seems less beneficial because the game is a little weird. It actually ranks everyone 5 overall higher than what they actually are. So if they're a 93, they're really an 88 in the game. But I don't know if the game just doesn't believe that there are 95 overalls or anything. So one of the interesting things that I found out when Miami was doing their winter ball was one of their players was like 27 overall. When I clicked the +1, it moved them to 50 overall. There was no way around that. So we have a lot of players that are in the low 53 overalls, 52 overalls that aren't actually that overall. So the cool thing is when you send them to winter ball, when you do that one button jump, it really boosts them. So just as a heads up, if you were to look at a player such as, now I have to find that player. There was someone on Pittsburgh that I sent to winter ball that was not a super high overall. Vlad Garaga. So he is currently a 61 slash 92. He was drafted in the 4th round. Um, if you were to look at him before winter ball, I think he was something like 53 slash 84. So
Big jump.
he got a huge jump. So that's what I was saying. And once again, the only team that actually did that again, other than me for the 4 teams or like 3 of the teams that I did it for, was Miami, and they're the ones that found it. And I'm sure Ryan didn't even know about that. So for those people that do listen to the pod, I do try to help out everyone, giving you ideas of how to better improve your players. So sending someone that's 73 slash 95 is great and all, because maybe that does give them the edge to start. But if you have that player that's like 51 slash 85, it may do a pretty good boost to them. So I would just kind of keep that in mind, because some of those players, especially pitchers, may not even have 50 movement. So you have to wait till they jump, and I think that's part of the reason that you see jumps going crazy.
Yeah, it's very interesting to think of that way. I know for me, I meant to do winter ball, didn't get around to it, and also I'm Boston. I spent a lot of money for agency, and I need to save whatever cash I have. But yeah, it's winter ball is beneficial, guys. It really is. It helps a lot more than you might think. So um, do it. Take
Yeah.
your, especially you big market team or you small market teams that have all that money. Spend it on yourself. Buy those slots.
Like, just quickly looking, so I just found a player that is 58 overall, who is 52 overall, and it shows that their control is 55. This player actually only has 42 control. So the moment that it's going to take a while for their control to go up. Um, and that doesn't actually change if they just go from 52 to 53 overall. But what really does change is honestly if they're the low overalls, right? So just keep that in mind when you're doing it. Someone in the draft, that might be 52 overall, or 53 or 54 or whatever, may actually only be 31 overall. And the moment I press that plus button, they could all of a sudden be very good.
Yep. And again, that's helpful information there, guys. So think about that and use that, especially when you're scouting, when you're drafting, when you're doing all those things. That there's ways to make players that don't look great actually pretty darn good.
Yep. Um, Anyways, so that was kind of that. Now, what I was thinking with the Winter Ball League, uh, I'm still trying to kind of figure out the best way to do it. So more or less, it's just the dice roll payouts. So I'm deciding whether to eliminate the 50-day injury, but I feel like maybe I'll keep it. But the way I have it currently is it's 10 million. If you do all the depth charts, you get two rolls. If you miss one depth chart, you get one roll, and if you miss two or more depth charts, you have to pay 20 instead of 10. So it's not like if you only do five depth charts, that's fine. You don't miss out on it. You just have to pay more than everyone else, which I think is fair. Anyways, the way that the dice roll payouts are currently looking for batters are if you roll a 1 to 20, you get a 50-day injury. 21 to 60, which is normally no change, is going to be +5 to dominant hand. And that can be whatever, it's dominant hand or skill. So you can tell me what skill you want it to be. Um, hey, then don't do it. Um, 61 to 130 is +5 to both hands equally, or skill. So if you do +5 contact, then it can become +5 on both, right? Uh, 131 to 185 is +10 to dominant hand or skill, and 186 to 200 is +10 to both hands or skill. So in that case, I guess maybe the way I could do it is two different skills like speed and fielding, rather than it being contact or power or eye or um, anything like that. Then for pitchers, I have 1 to 20, 50-day injury, 21 to 50, no change. So I left that one in for pitchers. 81 to 130 is +5 to movement, power, command, or control. 131 to 185 is +5 to two of them. And 186 to 200 is going to be +10 to two of them. Or I do it the exact same way that the other one is. So I am going to post this up in suggestions so I can actually get people to post their thoughts on this. I just figured that that's a way that, maybe you have that player that you really liked and you acquired him. And, it does suck when you've invested, a player and you think he's going to be better than he actually is. Let's say a Raphael Devers or something like that, who
So
looks pretty solid, but maybe if you could just improve his fielding, he is exactly what you want. Or if you could give him a little bit better eye, or whatever it is, maybe it's batting against lefties. Um, you have the ability to actually do something to them. I think it also allows people that everyone always wants to have some type of Hall of Fame player, and this gives them a chance to actually put maybe someone over the edge.
yeah, I think that's a very interesting. I think that all makes sense. Uh, I think it sounds great. I mean, I'll definitely be comment on that once it goes up on the board. I think it's a great idea. So, and I think to answer the Mets question, or Rain's question, is that we're not saying that you should send None but the weaker players to win a ball. What we're saying is the big guys, those 78, 95s or 83, 95s or whatever it is, those big guys, like they're probably going to hit. Like there's a very good chance they're going to hit just based on their vitals, just based on all of that. So it's sometimes better to send those middling prospects, those 68, 84s or whatever, the lower end prospects, because a jump for them is going to make a lot more difference than a jump to that guy that's clearly going to be a hit in the major leagues anyway. So that's what we're saying. We're not saying you have to, not saying you should. We're just recommending that it's possible to send some of those less known, less high peak guys because a jump for them, even a +1, is going to make a much bigger, as turning a guy that could be a bench player into an everyday starter compared to turning a superstar into a bigger superstar. Yes, both have their benefits, but in the long run, it might be more cost efficient and beneficial to the team to get more guys playable than to make one or two guys more playable, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And just that those people that are 52 overall may actually only be 30 overall, and they get like a huge bump. Just look back at winter ball. Look at if you want to specifically see the difference, look at Garriga on Pittsburgh pre winter ball, post winter ball. See how much of a different player he does appear. Look at Miami, and then look at um, I think it's there was another team that I sent people to. It might have been Minnesota. Uh, it would have been any of the ones that only had one player. But take a look at those players and just kind of see the risk reward. The risk is you do that and they still are garbage. But the reward is you might actually have gotten a gem just because the game has glitched them at 32 overall, which should not exist.
Right. Yep. All right. Well, I think that covers that part of it as well. I don't have anything else for tonight. I don't know if you have anything else you want to talk about before we sign off.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I feel like I've talked a lot, but draft
That's
is going
that's
to
fine.
be
I talked a lot at the start. You finished up strong, and then that's the way these work.
yeah, draft next Sunday. Is supposed to be at 9, so I might actually have to get someone to start it for me because I may be late in showing up, or I have to move it just because I have another work event this the next 2 Sundays. So in terms of that, we can see if anyone would like to do it. I know Jason usually is willing to. So if you hear this pod and someone's okay with kind of helping to run the draft, that'd be great. But
Drafts are fun, and they're super easy to run.
yeah, yeah.
Don't they can hear that in your voice. It's a podcast. Come on, we're not
Oh, you know
typing
what?
here.
It's actually not too bad.
See,
Uh,
guys, it's great. It doesn't
Especially because
suck.
this league has been pretty good at showing up or sending lists or just not doing either. And a couple of those teams, I'm gonna just call out Colorado, just kind of gets that top overall every time, and that's
Well,
the way it goes.
let's be fair. My list is usually take top overall based on what position, and I'm in that group too. I do a terrible job sometimes when it comes to the draft. I'm just like, oh shit, right, the draft. Take me highest pitcher by peak, who's youngest.
Yeah,
I know
your
I'm a
your
horrible
draft
person.
lists are sometimes sad.
Well, let's be fair. They can't be any worse than that one I sent to Andy that he literally said, "What the fuck," and then ignored it.
Yeah, I can see
To
that.
be fair, it was not. It was it was basically my crib sheet that I use while drafting, and it's not apparently suitable for normal people.
That being said, I have just posted the Winter League, and I will link everyone here. Um, the post, but if you can look at it, that would be fantastic. And just honestly, if anyone does recruit a player, that would be great. Um, because in all honesty, if we can get a couple more GMs, that would be good. Rain, from the sounds of it, is going to take over Baltimore. Uh, Pittsburgh's going to be kind of run by MZ, which is
Yep.
good. I know Fred would like an AL team, so I may even switch out and just take over Atlanta so he can take Houston and everyone gets covered. But yeah, that's really all I have for the podcast here. I think it'll be a very fun season. I would like to do another podcast after the draft. If you have time, MZ.
Yeah, I should. That'll be the what? I mean, early next week, right? Or not? Well, week after next.
Yeah, it'll be
That start of
the following
October,
week.
end of September week.
And Canadian Mike wants to be in on this. He wants to join the pod. He doesn't want a team yet. I've tried to suggest it to him heavily, but you know,
Yeah, well, we'll work on them. Just
good.
call up Corey, have him bring over a big thing of poutine, everything.
Yeah,
And there's that negativity, Fred. Just because negativity is not banned here, Fred, doesn't mean you can come bring it all. And nothing. Okay, good enough. All right. Well, that is it, as we said, for the podcast. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope even that half of you complained about not knowing about stuff because you didn't hear about it. So it's very easy. Go on YouTube and just push play from the immortal words of Aerosmith. All right. This is Mike and Adam signing off for tonight. Have a pleasant listening experience. Goodbye.